O great spirit of our ancestors, I raise my pipe to you, to your messengers, the four winds, and to Mother Earth, who provides for your children. Give us the wisdom to teach our children to love, to respect, and to be kind to each other, so that they may grow with peace in mind. Let us learn to share all the good things you provide for us on this earth. Peace, peace, family. Welcome to Yemima's World, the Jelly Moose's Cafe. I am your hostess, Yemima. It's good to be black in the land of the living once again, but this is a somber day. If you are in the United States, you know that white supremacy won on last night, and I believe that this country is in for some tough time. But we are in November, and we are in Native American or Indigenous Heritage Month. My focus is going to be on the Black Indians and their contributions and their experiences living amongst the Native Americans, or the first people as they are called. I thought it would be interesting to bring this particular story tonight, given what happened yesterday with the election, and also given how we arrived at the results that we got to, partially how we arrived. Um, I knew in my heart of hearts that we were not going to ever elect a Black woman in this country to be president. We got her for vice president, but I don't think we'll ever have a Black woman in this country as president, not in our lifetimes, maybe 3 or 4 generations down the road, but certainly not in our lifetime. And so I wanted to talk about the Trail of Tears, especially the Black tears that were on the Trail of Tears. And some people that look like me, that have a lot of melanin in their skin, opted to vote for 45, which is now 47, to become president because they wanted to kind of sit in his shadow of opportunity and provision. They believed that if they kissed his boots and his rings, that he would reward them. Even after they had kissed the boot and the ring, and he didn't reward them, there were 3 of them who thought that he would pick them as his vice president running mate, but he decided to go with the representative for Maybelline for the eyeliner. So we're going to talk about the Trail of Tears, and then we'll discuss a little bit how it kind of meshes together with the election last night. All right, so let me just I can get through this. All right, so the picture that you see on the screen is a picture of Black Choctaw Native Americans. All right, so the forced removal of Native Americans from the southeastern United States beginning in the 1830s to Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River is known as the Trail of Tears. Under British colonial rule and continuing during the first decades of American independence, Indians were forced westward by expanding numbers of colonists. As the white population increased in the new United States, citizens urged the federal government to open up these new lands to white settlement. Land speculators were prominent leaders of this movement. There were 5 major Indian tribes in the southeast regions of the United States. They were known as the 5 civilized tribes. They were the Cherokees, the Chickasaws, the Creeks, the Choctaws, and the Seminoles. Because they had adopted many of the customs, values, and religion of the dominant white culture, is why they were considered civilized. There were 2 things that they had to do to be civilized. One was adapt to Christianity, or adopt the Christian values, or become Christians. And the second thing was to enslave Africans. Now, how much of an oxymoron is it for someone to tell you to, in order to become civilized, you had to oppress and enslave someone? But this is white folks' language. This ain't our language. This their language. So the more affluent Indians had large farms and agricultural plantations, and like Southern white landowners, purchased and used enslaved blacks for labor. In the census of 1833, the Creek tribe had a population of 22,694 with 902 enslaved Africans. The Cherokees numbered 16,542 with 1,592 slaves. These slaveholders, although always a minority of their tribes, were nonetheless oppressors of blacks they owned and enthusiastic participants in a global economy driven by cotton. They also believed they were racially superior to blacks. Now, they ain't one but a shade lighter than us. But because the white men told them that they were superior, they felt superior to those Africans that they enslaved. In 1830, gold was discovered, ushering in a gold rush, ushering in a gold rush in Georgia, which resulted in even greater demands by whites to remove the Indians from the land. And in response to the U.S. Congress and President Andrew Jackson, they promoted the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which allocated $500,000 to purchase Indian land in the southeast and remove the inhabitants west of the Mississippi to what would be known as Indian Territory. And an estimated 70,000 Indians, along with their black slaves, who were approximately 10% of the total, were forced to the new Indian Territory. Several different land routes and one riverine route were used by the various tribes and their slaves to reach the new land. The average distance of the routes was 5,000 miles. Good God Almighty. This forced movement and resettlement of people was collectively called the Trail of Tears. What is not widely known is that thousands of black slaves, considered property by Indians, also suffered and died on the journey. Slaves who walked the Trail of Tears hunted, cooked, and cleaned for their masters. One prominent Cherokee, Joseph Van, took 200 slaves with him. At least 175 black slaves owned by Cherokees died in the transit. Now remember, I told you at the beginning of this that these tribes were considered civilized tribes because they adapted to Christianity, and they said that they would enslave Africans. They wanted that proximity to whiteness, and they thought that they were superior to those Africans that they enslaved. So they wanted that proximity to whiteness. But what ended up happening was even that proximity to whiteness wasn't enough to keep them off the trail of tears. Once in Indian territory, slaveholding Indians used their slaves to increase their wealth. Enslaved people cleared lands and plowed and planted cotton and other crops. Others were engaged in skilled trades like blacksmithing, carpentry, etc., and as domestic servants. And in the 1860s, the slave population among the various tribes ranged from 10% to 29% of the total population in the new Indian Territory. And on the eve of the Civil War, Indian people held 7,367 black slaves. Slave codes that the Cherokee had enacted in 1819 continued in force in the new territory. The vast majority of slaves taken to the new territory were treated as chattel and regarded as property. However, there is evidence that the conditions of slaves varied among the different Indian peoples. The Seminoles, in particular, treated their slaves as indentured servants or sharecroppers, allowing them to remain armed and live in small settlements while collecting a yearly tax, usually agricultural products, from them. The Trail of Tears, a consequence of greed and racism, was a shameful episode in our nation's history that negatively impacted untold numbers of Indians, but also intensified the suffering of their enslaved African Americans. So when people talk about or teach about the Trail of Tears, and I had heard um, this phrase for a long time. I knew what it was, But I knew and I didn't know. I did not know how many enslaved Africans it affected. I really didn't. I honestly did not know until a few years ago that the five civilized tribes um, enslaved Africans. I've always been told that they were friends and that it was the Native Americans, the first people that taught the Africans, how to escape to the swamps and what plants they could use, what herbs they could use for medicine and things of that nature. That was the indication, kind of like the indication that they gave of white people and Native Americans that they had this great relationship. They came in and the Native said, "Yay, come on in, let's have some food." And that wasn't it at all. So they really don't teach about the white people coming in and genocide and them giving them blankets with smallpox. And they don't teach either that these five civilized tribes enslaved Africans. And that is a big part that's left out. And that these enslaved Africans after the war, they should have been part of land. And you don't see a lot of Native American Indians um, when you see them talking about land and they show documentaries or whatever, the Native Black Africans are left out. You don't see them, and I think that's a horrible thing. Um, I don't know if I said this in the first video because I've only done one video or one episode for this month, trying to get through the elections. But in 2019, they had an event here in the 757 at Fort Monroe, and it was the anniversary of the 400 of the 1619 Africans that had come that was brought here. And they had a big event, and they had some drumming and things of that nature, and they had uh, a Native American tribe or nation that come, and it was I believe it was three African American or Native Black Indigenous women and one white man. And he talked about having a powwow. And when he was talking about the powwow, he first gave honor to Jesus, his Lord and Savior. And he was inviting people to the powwow. And he talked about how it was going to be a revival and how there would be laying on of hands, um, you know, with Jesus in the midst. And the black women, they seemed to go along with it. And I was baffled because I have some friends who are Native and Indigenous and Black, and they hold to their traditions. And if you don't know, there is such thing as a $5 Indian, and the $5 Indian is when they were after the war when they were given a landmass to the Native Indigenous people. White men paid the government $5 to put them on what was called the DOS roll, DAWES, and put them down basically in the census as being Native Americans so that they could get the land. And they were pure white. Now, I don't know if you know who Will Rogers is. He's a man who was back in the 30s, 20s, and 30s. He used to do westerns, and he's a $5 Indian. And I would bet a dollar to a donut that the white man at the event was a $5 Indian. And so we have ancestors who are Black and Indigenous and had their Black tears on um, the Trail of Tears. And we need to honor them, um, remember them, call their names, respect them. And I just want to read a little bit about the spirituality of Native Americans. It's very, very similar to African spirituality. And that's why I truly believe that we were here first in our pure blackness and our, again, our skin, our bodies uh, adapts to the climate. And so over time, our skin lightened. It didn't turn white, but it lightened up quite a bit. But listen to their spirituality and what indigenous people believed when it came to religion or spirituality. So, Native American spirituality is categorized by a deep connection to nature, believing in the interconnectedness of all living things, with a central belief in a great spirit or creator, often expressed through reverence for the land, Mother Earth, and respect for all cultures and diverse practices across the tribes, including rituals, ceremonies, and communication with spirits through dreams and visions, all the while emphasizing community and harmony with the natural world. There is no single unified belief system, but a shared understanding of the spiritual dimension within everything around them. That is so much like what is in Africa because you have so many different nations um, in the countries, different countries of Africa, they all have a belief in a creator and a great spirit, but how they worship it, the rituals and ceremonies may differ. So the great spirit, most tribes believe in a supreme being, often referred to again as the great spirit or creator, who is responsible for all life and creation. Now, this is it's called animism. I don't know if I like that word or not. For me, it seems tribal, or it seems I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it says that that is the belief that spirits exist in all natural phenomena, including animals, plants, and rocks, and even inanimate objects. They believe in the sacredness of the land. They have deep respect for the earth as a living entity that is considered, again, Mother Earth. They have community focus, strong emphasis on the well being of the tribe or community, with decisions often made through collective wisdom. Their rituals and ceremonies, they have traditional practices like sweat lodges, vision quests, and various seasonal ceremonies to honor nature and connect with the spirit world. The symbolism could be sacred symbols like the circle, the eagle, and the buffalo to represent important concepts. But there again, there is that diversity among them. They share core beliefs. Each Native American tribe has its own unique spiritual traditions, deities, and practices. They have oral tradition. Their spirituality is often passed down through stories and teachings shared orally from generation to generation. And due to the sensitive nature of Native American spirituality, it's important to approach learning about it with respect and to avoid appropriation. Now, for the longest time, well, not for the longest time, but I know that when it comes to sage, burning sage, a lot of people won't burn it because they said it's appropriating um, burning sage of the Native Americans. But since the first that came here were Black, and since you enslaved my ancestors, Africans, then I don't think I would be appropriating it since you adopted them into your culture. So it has now become mine. All right, so that's it for tonight. Short and sweet. We'll do some more stories as the spirit leads me. I'm just having a tough time right now. I knew it was going to be this way, but oh well. All right, so you know the drill. Love yourself, love each other, give yourself some grace, give others some grace, unless they voted for Trump, then don't give them anything. And I mean that with my whole chest. Uh, honor your ancestors, they will honor you. We are our ancestors. Stay black, stay cool, stay warm, stay healthy, stay vigilant. In these times, please stay vigilant. And until next time, peace, family.